on my own. I mean, if I have to rent a rowboat.
Congratulations, Milo. This is exactly what I wanted to hear. But forget the rowboat, son. We'll travel in style.
Disney has always been remembered as the company who brought forth musicals and adaptations of fairy tales that go back centuries. And despite having its family-targeted demographic, where anyone at any age can enjoy them, some have identified and looked down on them. Which is rather unfortunate, though I'm not one to preach on a soapbox here. Admittedly, at some point when I was a kid, I also was in a phase of looking down on Disney films. But an unexpected surprise happened in 2001, a movie that dared to appeal to the older audiences, with action, explosions, and various elements that would be the equivalent of an adult summer blockbuster. Atlantis, The Lost Empire. When I saw the trailers for this when I was 12, I was utterly speechless of what Disney tried to do. My mind reacting with, "That's Disney? Holy shit! When did Disney grow some testicles? I have to check this out." Of course, it wouldn't be until I was older to know that Disney had their fair share of serious films prior to this one. But sure enough, I got the chance to see it in the theater by myself for the first time as the rest of my family went to see Tomb Raider. And despite the hiccups, I loved the hell out of it. I love the story, I love the action, I love the world of what Atlantis brought on screen, and I love how much of an adult-like film it was really going for. The music by James Newton Howard was fantastic, and the animation had a comic book look that matches very well to something action-packed like this compared to the usual Disney animation formula. The people behind this film went all the way on their ambition, even going as far as to invent its own language. It felt like Disney was personally trying to stick with me and my age, and given my impressions with the film, it certainly did its job. However, despite my nostalgia, there are noticeable flaws whenever I have to take off the rose-tinted glasses. It is important to remember that there are some things this movie does suffer from. Not a minute to spare, it begins with the city falling beneath the surface after a giant flood emerges. From there, it lets you know this movie isn't fucking around. This is no musical, it's no comedy. It's pretty serious. Over the duration, we're on an expedition and adventure similar to Indiana Jones meeting with Stargate and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, a chunk of which being steampunk, where we see inventions of submarines, vehicles that can drill, and custom warplanes. And upon discovering Atlantis itself, it's a culture that is alive in ruins as the ruler is keeping a secret. A secret that revolves around their longevity and other sources that are so powerful, it becomes the reason Atlantis remained in its predicament. It's a theme between greed and how some power is too much for humanity. With what the movie builds up to, it does leave you guessing behind the mystery of what Atlantis beholds and what we learn about their culture. I did mention before about the native language being invented, but it's also fascinating at what sources were made by their ancient technology. They have their own vehicles, their own tools for food and resources, and the crystal necklaces they wear are more than just their longevity. They can heal, they can light up lamps, and they even have keys to the vehicles I mentioned earlier. All of this is convincing as we want to learn about their culture as much as our main protagonist, Milo Thatch, voiced by Michael J. Fox, and I absolutely love this character. Compared to other Disney protagonists who embark on being the straight man or question their livelihood, Milo is a dork who just wants to fulfill his grandfather's wishes in discovering Atlantis. He's hyperactive, excited, but also socially awkward. I can't get enough of this character. He's unfortunately met with an obstacle of being an outsider due to his awkward nature, ranging from being rejected by his museum job and funding the expedition, to being bullied by the crew when he's on the said expedition. Approaching halfway in the movie is the city's Princess Kita. She's worried that Atlantis is slowly crumbling apart, and wants to know the secrets about the city herself to save it. This is partially due to the fact that people forgot about their root knowledge after the city sank beneath the Earth's surface. And on that note, her father, voiced by Leonard Nimoy, keeps it hidden for reasons explained later in the film. Aside from the destructive power source, he doesn't want to risk his daughter's potential demise like his wife has at the beginning of the movie. It's frustrating for her, and it's easy to connect with her struggles in watching her civilization restored. But aside from her turmoil of the city, she's open, kind, and is obviously rebellious as she goes with Milo in finding clues to Atlantis' secrets. Unfortunately, the rest of the characters are a mixed bag. Some are silly, some are too serious, and some are predictable. The crew itself consists of Vinny, who's an expert demolition, a French geologist named Mole, medical officer Joshua Sweet, a young mechanic named Ramirez, a wagon chef named Cookie, and a communicationist named Packard. All of these characters are fun with their own quirks, ranging from unusual behaviors, certain obsessions that are kind of questionable, and at times they can get annoying, especially considering the rest of the movie's intended tone. However, they do have their moments and their dialogue can be funny as hell. In an attempt to flesh the characters out, they all share their backstories at the campsite, explaining what they hope to succeed in on their expedition. It breaks the rule of show don't tell, but at the very least when they're all explaining themselves, it still does its job in getting you to know about them. And even later on, you're left wondering if they can be trusted, hinted by their own motives.
You know, that's what this is all about, right? I mean, discovery, teamwork, adventure. Unless maybe you're just in it for the money.
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 I'm going to say money.
Well, I guess I set myself up for that one.
However, their motives are partially led up to the theme of greed, no thanks to the antagonists, Helga and Rourke. While the movie leaves you wondering what the expedition unfolds, these two being revealed as money-greedy villains were so predictable that it makes them incredibly flat and cliché. Helga, while not being as problematic as Rourke, always had a stick up her ass with everything happening with her. There are some times when she comes off a little mischievous, but it doesn't help masking how predictable she becomes in the long run. At the very least, she had a few funny lines.
I came down the chimney. Ho, ho, ho.
All right, cowboy, pack it up and move it out. Move it, people! Sometime today would be nice!
This is once again stating how hilarious the movie's dialogue can be. Rourke, unfortunately, is a stereotypical military general who loses his mind and only cares about greed. And it's a real shame too, because James Garner did his best at voicing the character. What's more ridiculous is that he's so eager for monetary gain that he plots to steal a major artifact that keeps the city going. Yeah, that's a pretty big buck and all, but dude, you have a living civilization hidden beneath the grounds of the ocean. That's a bigger discovery of mankind than anything before. I'm sure you'd be richer than the Queen of fucking England at this point. As a matter of fact, I think a better way to handle Rourke would be to debate with Milo over whether or not they show Atlantis to the world as a major discovery. It's what Milo wanted since the beginning of the movie. But he would then be conflicted between fulfilling his grandfather's goal and risking exposing any potential threat. Thematically, it adds on to what I said before, how some sources of power are too strong for humanity. Granted, a part of the secrecy is talked about at the end with Mr. Whitmore, but it's not the central point as it should be. But as is, Rourke's motive in financial gain, and only financial gain, is such a flat afterthought that I just had to roll my eyes. Something that does work better in terms of development were the rest of the crew. I know I harped on them for their comedic traits, conflicting the movie's central tone. But at one point, they do grow a change of heart and side with Milo after the big reveal of stealing the artifact. Admittedly, it's also cliche as hell, but what makes it so forgiving is the overall interactions they had with Milo throughout the movie. From bullying him to warming up to him, and even appreciating some help that he provided. Not to mention when everyone else talked about themselves at the campsite, they understood Milo's passion in searching for Atlantis. Compared to Rourke's motives, this works much more organically. Despite how ridiculous Rourke was written, it doesn't take away the rest of the enjoyment of the film. Aside from the action sequences, there are moments that are just breathtaking and exciting at where the next scene goes, such as when the submarine is dispatched, when the city is discovered, when Kita is chosen by the crystal, and saving the best for last, when giant machines are summoned to form a shield and save Atlantis from a volcanic eruption. This scene goes on for a while, but the build-up and the race against time before the lava reaches the city is suspenseful and investing. So you can see how much of an impression this film has left me. After the many previous Disney films that were either musicals or comedies, this was definitely a breath of fresh air. This film was out at the right time for me, but unfortunately not so much with critics and the crowd. After the film's release, it didn't do too well at the box office. Mind you, it didn't flop. It was in fact a moderate success. But it wasn't as successful as Disney had hoped for, and thus they claimed that it wasn't one of their best works. A part of me easily begs to differ though, as much later over the years, the film has rightfully gained its cult status. The world and culture of Atlantis, the language it has, and the exciting action the film has provided, who could blame them? Some have even stated that within recent years of the Disney remakes, this is one that was highly suggested along with Treasure Planet. I can only agree with a pinch of salt though, since I don't trust Disney in handling their own material. However, if a live-action Atlantis were to happen, I'd cross my fingers for Tom Holland to play as Milo Thatch. But that's only me, and I don't want to dive too much into this subject. I'd leave that up to you. Anyone who hasn't seen the movie yet, I definitely recommend you check it out. It may not be perfect, and it's not like the other Disney films prior, but that's what makes it so grand. Atlantis: The Lost Empire gets a 4 out of 5. Thank you for watching. This is GoldenFox, and take care.